One of the biggest clashes in sport now. It's the Springboks and the All Blacks. Great sporting duels on ESPN Classic.
This is the green and the black, right? And it doesn't get better than the green and the black.
It's a total big guns. It's two big guns that since I was near to a cockroach. New Zealand and South Africa. In my youth, I queued a week, lying in the bloody outside Ellis Park to get tickets to see New Zealand play South Africa. It's something special, guys.
For South Africa and New Zealand, rugby is more than a game. It's part of their national identity.
The ultimate test is the All Black, that black jersey. There's something about that black jersey. It's death, it's night, that really gets into our psyche, and we really have to play against them and beat them.
It was a love-hate relationship. They loved you socially. They wanted to mix and meet, but get you on the field, by hell, they only had one objective, and that was to beat you.
I always say, if you've never played the All Blacks, you can't call yourself a Springbok.
One of the moments that South Africans live for. And then, of course, it is most special when we're playing against New Zealand and to watch that haka.
A war cry handed down from the Maori warrior Te Rauparara. It begins with the words, "It is death, it is death, it is life, it is life." Life, death and rugby. In South Africa and New Zealand, this intense passion for the game has sparked a fierce rivalry that has burned for over a century.
I went on 6 Springbok tours. The best experience was that in New Zealand. When you arrived, the people carried you on their shoulders, but when you got onto the field, they threw you to the ground.
We had to play them, we had to beat them. They were the test. If we could beat them, we were number one. And they felt exactly the same way.
First, as John Gainsford breaks through, Roux shoots forward and flying for the line.
For me, it's the greatest series, there's no doubt about it. Playing against New Zealand is the toughest team, the hardest team, the most exciting experience any Springbok will have.
Passes to Engelbrecht. The speedy wingers away, past Willemant, but Dick is there to...
Like all sportsmen, you want to be top dog. You know, you want to compete with the best and beat them, you know. And certainly the best in the world perceived early on were New Zealand and South Africa. They were perceived as the best. So this was the battle for the crown.
The British established New Zealand as a colony in the early 19th century. Tucked away in the South Pacific Ocean, the colonizers drew wealth from its rich, fertile soils. The British and the indigenous Maoris signed the Treaty of Waitangi in 1841 and have lived side by side in relative harmony ever since.
We all lived together, played together, and then we went to next to the college, and you're mixing with same people, similar people, but you lived in little communities then, and everything was sharing and caring. And
the British brought rugby to New Zealand, and it flourished. The physical strength and endurance demanded by the game was well suited to the predominantly farming population.
Physical hard work, fencing, cutting scrub and things like that. It really, in fact, for me, it was a saviour because I wasn't physically big, and it certainly built, you know, I was able to take the knocks a lot more.
When young New Zealanders dream of becoming a future All Black, there is one team above all that they would love to beat, the Springboks.
Oh, the Springboks are the greatest. There's no, you know, always have been in my book and still are.
Going on tour with the All Blacks sometimes meant leaving your home and family for up to 4 months.
Being an All Black in a country club and a country union, the people rallied around and they helped on the farm. The club put the hay in, they shore the sheep. They did a lot of things to help Dad out on the farm.
11,000 kilometres away, the British had also introduced rugby to another of its colonies. However, in South Africa, the game would develop differently.
Rugby is essentially a school's game. You know, it was used in the 19th century in Britain by the schools to get discipline and to develop muscular Christianity, men who were going to go out and govern an empire.
As well as the English settlers, rugby was quickly embraced by the Afrikaner population, large, powerful men hardened by working the land of the wild interior.
Always where you had a conglomeration of physically active men, and without the sort of debilitating influence of women. So that's why schools it was important. Places like the mines it was important. Army regiments, you know, it gave them this big physical outlet. And I think probably that's why the two countries took to it so much, you know.
I think it was Colin Meads that said of us, "They tough bastards," and there's no doubt that's exactly how they see us. But certainly, going back into our history, we tended to put out teams that were bigger than the rest of the world. And we tended to put out teams that were full of farm boys, that worked on the lands, that worked with their hands. And they were rough, tough men.
Rugby was strictly a white and Afrikaner sport. The black and coloured populations were not allowed to compete.
I also had some reservation about rugby, because it was all Afrikaners, mainly. Not just whites, but the majority were Afrikaners. And these were people who piloted our oppression.
Despite this, even the future president, Nelson Mandela, could not ignore the national and cultural significance of the game.
It is because I understood the impact of sport to the country and the world. And as I say, we did not approach it from the point of view whether this was a sport of the minority or majority. It is the excellence of the players in the field. And South African players have been very good, although we oppose them because it was the application of apartheid in sport. We oppose them.
In 1899, New Zealanders took to the field in South Africa for another fierce encounter. Only this time, it was the battlefield.
The Anglo-Boer War was seen as a white man's war. So when the Empire asked for troops, they took the troops from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, really. So lots of New Zealanders came here, including Dave Gallagher, the first All Black captain.
My grandfather told me that the South Africans were the old enemy, the oldest enemy that New Zealand could ever have, because his memories went back to the Boer War. And he didn't like these people. And he said it is terribly important for us to beat them. And so this was lodged in my brain, and it never really got out.
The rivalry manifested itself on the rugby field. In 1905 and 1906, both the All Blacks and the Springboks sent winning teams to England.
And that first created a kind of rivalry when the people from those countries looked at the results and saw that both teams were very successful, but one was slightly more successful than the other, and it created a rivalry which they talked about in the trenches during the war when they were together, and in the Army series in Britain straight after the war. And it created the desire for them to play each other, which they did in 1921 for the first time, and that began the tremendous rivalry that has come down the years.